Hi guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits a Mid-Trap podcast. What's new this week, Mike?
Hey, not much, but can't believe it's the end of October. Freaking Halloween right around the corner. This is, it's wild. Fall is
We
here.
got Halloween, then Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and soon you know it'll be 2023. Wow. And we've been doing this pod for almost 2 years.
2023, is that right, Chris?
2022. Sorry, 2022. I'm just skipping 2022. I already know it's going to be bad, so I just want to go right to 2023.
If we could have skipped 2020, skipped 2022, yeah, some sort of schedule here. I wouldn't mind that.
Can we just have some non-election years?
Let's just pick some years we can skip and just throw them out. Just toss them.
Yeah, there we go.
2020 first on the list.
That's for sure.
What are the kids for Halloween?
So Patrick finally decided we have a Spider-Man costume that he just got it. He didn't wear it for Halloween. So he's gonna wear that, and then he wanted to be a zombie.
Nice.
And then he wanted to be a ghost, and then he wanted to be a mummy, and then finally, when I was looking up zombie costumes, and they were like really expensive, and they were kind of gross, and he couldn't pick one, so I was like, you know what? You're just going to be a firefighter. And then he got all excited about that because we have like all the stuff to be a firefighter.
Nice. I feel like he was showing me some of his firefighting toys.
Yeah. And then so we went and we got him like a new firefighter helmet, like one that, not a plastic one that you get like for free at, I don't know, Chuck E. Cheese or whatever. So like a real helmet.
Nice.
And he's been wearing it every day. So he's really excited. And
nice.
Mary is going to be Elsa.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's hot right now.
We went to all the Disney stores are like closing in the malls, so we went and they had a pretty good discount on that.
Nice.
And then all of our kids have been pumpkins. We have this one like baby pumpkin costume that we put our kids in around Halloween, and so Patrick was a pumpkin, Mary was a pumpkin. Now Adeline will be a pumpkin.
I love it. All right, I'm gonna need some pictures here, as you know.
Yeah, we'll get them. We're actually going up to Penn State for Halloween. It's Caroline's sister's 21st birthday on Halloween, so
All right.
we're gonna go visit her, do some trick or treating, go out to brunch. So,
speaking of Halloween, that's kind of fitting for today's episode.
yes, it is.
Covering some very evil people in the Mid-Trap series. Some ghosts, some goblins, and some ghouls. We're doing Vince's villains.
Super excited about this. You know, I don't know if you have Disney Plus or if any of our listeners have Disney Plus. To get into the spirit for Halloween, you know, they've been putting all these Halloween movies on, and they've also been touting up the villains. So, you know, instead of saying watch The Little Mermaid or watch Aladdin, you can just it's just this row across the feed of villains, and you know, you pick Jafar and Ursula.
Nice.
And I think that would be perfect for the Mid-Trap Pod series. You know, if all of these things were a TV series or whatever, you know, you just have Hank Clark and Rafik and Louis Gould. Like I was just thinking about that when the kids and I were on Disney Plus earlier.
Dude, that's
So
awesome.
This is perfect this time of year.
If I could scroll through on my phone, just like, you know, like IMDb, when you search like actors and it has like their roles that they've played, just search through all of these characters and these villains and get pictures of them. That'd be pretty sweet.
I really, really hope that, you know, because we got the Gray Man coming. We got
Jack Carr.
Jack Carr's Terminal List, or, you know, whatever that's going to... Is it going to be called Terminal List?
I think it's going to be... Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Because that's just the name of the first book, but it's already... I think Amazon's already greenlit it for at least 2 seasons. But, you know, someone's got to make this. I've even heard rumors of the Brad Thor series is coming. It's coming along. So we need something more than one subpar movie with this series. Like, come on, give it to me.
All right, subpar is being very generous. That is a very kind way to describe that movie, which shall not be named. Speaking of villains, the movie that shall not be named.
Honestly, the better Mid-Trap movie is White House Down.
Yeah, Olympus Has Fallen.
Yeah, no, Olympus Has Fallen. Yeah,
Right.
not a White House Down. Olympus Has Fallen.
I swear, ever since I saw that movie, I think of Gerard Butler, like his face, just as Mid-Trap. I mean, I do. I'm sorry. Not
Yeah.
Dylan O'Brien.
Yeah.
Maybe Dylan O'Brien if we're talking American Assassin, Laxbro, younger Mitch, but I don't know how he... Yeah, anyway, we've been down this road.
We're going to go down this rabbit hole again.
I don't want to
stop.
get there. Yeah. So before we get into Vince's villains, which, by the way, we're going to recap all of the big bads in each book and who are some of the politician villains or politi-villains in each book, as we know that was part of Vince's craft. Then Chris and I are each going to give you our top 5 villains, of which we don't know each other's lists. So
yeah, we don't.
I'm curious how they're going to compare. But before we get into all that, we do have a giveaway for a sticker. We said a few weeks ago we would give a sticker to the best rap emoji challenge. Whoever could summarize the plot of Enemy at the Gates in exactly 5 emojis. I don't know how you did, Chris, on Instagram, but I've got some pretty solid submissions on Twitter.
I had one that was pretty good. But besides your wife, who submitted 5 shrugs, because I'm guessing she hasn't read the novel yet. I had one that was good. So, but you want me to give it to you?
Yeah, sure. Let's hear that one.
All right. So we got a smiley face, a monocle, a sad face, and then an extreme sad face, and then a crying face, which pretty much sums up, the progression of the book. If you're upset about the ending.
Yeah, a lot of sad faces, a lot of those tears.
I've been seeing like these people posting on the Mitrap, not the Mitrap, but the Vince Flynn fan page, and I really hope people listen to our pod,
right,
last week's pod, and think about it that way, and because I could see how it'd be upsetting, but if you truly think about it, and if you look at the arc, anyways, what was your winners?
Right. No, I'll agree with you just real quick. We're getting a lot of posting, and I've seen a lot of posting. Anytime you mention Enemy at the Gates, just a lot of negativity. And I'm just wondering if these people have had conversations, had reread it twice, gone back to some of the older books, The Last Man, so Extreme Measures. Yeah, I'm with you, but right, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I just hope before you are rock solid in that opinion, you really consider all angles and give Enemy at the Gates a shot instead of just having a kind of a closed mind to it, just based on one quick read or reaction. But you're right, another conversation for another time.
I'm going to sidebar on this one time. This is honestly one of the harder things to do with a serialization that of these type of novels that are quote unquote thriller beach reads, like everyone gets them during the summer. This is obviously in the fall, but these people have been reading these series and they read them once every year. And are they having these same discussions that we're having, like going deep down analysis? They read the book, think about it, and then move on to the next, Brad Thor, the next, whatever is coming out next. And I could see in the moment how if you don't remember, or you haven't read The Survivor since it came out in what year did it come out? I have it pulled up right here. The Survivor came out in 2014. If you haven't read The Survivor in 2014, or you haven't read Extreme Measures since 2008, you might not remember what the hell Mitrap did, to Mike Nash. So
you're probably just thinking, oh, Mike Nash is that really cool family guy who's also a badass
exactly.
and is really close to Mitch and they're tight friends. But it's like, dude, there's a lot more under the surface there. Yeah. Dude, I hear you. All right, emojis, though. I've got maybe 2 or 3 who are contenders for the winner, and I definitely have my favorite. So I've got one. We got a sword, pistol, test tube, helicopter, oh shit face. I like the helicopter. We got Fred Mason in this book. I'm down with that.
What's the sword, though? What's the sword?
Dude, Excalibur's mine. I have no idea. Just fucking no idea. All right. Well, next one is exclamation point in like a yellow triangle. I guess like a hazard sign.
Hazard. Yeah, for the virus.
That dude who's like blowing his top. The steam coming out of the emoji's ears and like top of its head. A ghost. a coronavirus-looking amoeba thingy, and a mousetrap.
All right.
That one's a little esoteric, a little out there. So that was James Davison on Twitter. Shout out to you. And Ottawa RV Guy had the other one with the sword. I think this is my winner, though, the next one. So I'm going with my man Credo at Dan Credo ON1. He's got googly eyes with the tongue, hanging out of its mouth, poop emoji, thumbs down, the world, and then money bags.
That's your winner? You want to explain how that references the book?
All right. Well, you start off with the googly eyes because you got Mitch Rapp, Scott, and the DARPA guy messing around with the taser grenade.
Okay.
You got the pile of dog shit because that's basically everything in this book just goes to hell. You got the thumbs down because Nash is being played and becoming deeper into being a mole. You got the entire world because the cooks want to dominate it. Nicholas Ward has all the money in the world. And then the money bags is, it's Nicholas Ward. And so it's basically world domination versus money. Nicholas Ward's got the money, could do the world domination, doesn't want to. The cooks want to, but they don't have his money. They don't have Irina Rapp. And it's all a pile of dog shit. I love it.
All right. It was your game, so you picked the winner. There you go.
Unless you really want the sword to get it. I mean, just... Two people did the sword. We got another sword, too.
Are we missing a sword scene? Did we not talk about the sword scene?
We got water cannons, crossbows. Now we need a fucking samurai sword.
We need Mitch to gut someone with a sword. Shit.
Oh, man. Would he... no, not a samurai sword. I feel like he would use like old medieval King Arthur sword. Just like a heavy, just a heavy beast of a sword.
Like a long sword with like a two-handed sword, or
a two-handed long sword. Exactly. But he'd wield it with one hand. He'd
be so strong he can wield it with one hand.
Yo, he'd throw that thing one hand like a friggin' hatchet. Absolutely.
Damn. Well, that's our emoji winners. Oh, before we get into today's pod, I just want to give a quick shout out. We forgot to mention this in last week's pod, but Kyle spent 4 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. I just want to give him all the praise. We love this book. Kyle, you have our support. Keep making good books. There you go.
Yes, sir. Keep it up. Keep it up. Vince's villains, like we said, you want to start out with a recap of all the villains from each book. Try to determine who was the big bad. That was a term we used to use early on in the pod. Vince would write these big bads and a whole bunch of secondary villains, usually the politicians. But sometimes, I'm going to argue here, the politician would be the big bad.
We kick it off with term limits, where I'm going to argue the big bad is Scott Coleman. Because,
right.
I mean, he's kind of like, before we understand who he is and his motives, he is the villain of this story. We don't know what he's doing. He's killing senators, he's killing congressmen, giving demands. So he's the villain. I mean, the other secondary villains are obviously Stu Garrett, Mike Nance, the president, who... the president's kind of weak there. He's just a bumbling idiot. He doesn't really know what's going on in his administration. And obviously Arthur Higgins, who, Stu Garrett and Mike Ness get into bed with. I think a lot of people would probably argue that, Nance and Garrett and Arthur, those three are the villains of this story. But I'd probably say Scott is the villain.
Yes, I think Scott and his actions really drive the plot. I think Stu Garrett is a fantastic character. I don't know if every scene and the whole plot of the book comes back to Stu Garrett, causing the mayhem. He's just this weaselly figure in the background. And Stu Garrett would really be nothing without Nance and Higgins and the president, So they're more of like a cabal of, these gangsters, where I think Scott Coleman is really the one pulling the strings of the plot and really creating the terror with his assassinations.
Yeah, and Garrett and Nance and Higgins wouldn't they wouldn't have done what they did if Scott hadn't started, his plot. Like they were sort of just meandering along. I mean, obviously trying to take power, whatever they could from the president. But when they start to become more of the villain, like halfway through the novel, obviously what they do that explosion on the one senator from Minnesota, right?
Right.
Senator O'Brien.
The car bomb.
Yeah. So like they're just mimicking, they're being copycats. So
Right.
yeah, I think, and the more interesting story is this redemption arc with Scott. If you want to give him a redemption arc of, in the beginning, he's this misguided soldier, who's jaded, has this whole team, whatever, wants to have these term limits, and then at the end, he kind of wins, I guess, but I mean, then they realize that there's this other stuff, So I think Scott, it really is the villain in the story.
Yeah. And last week we talked about one of the best things that Vince and this series is able to do is that character arc over the long game, like a long period of books. And in this case, Scott was Vince's first villain and would come to be possibly some people's favorite characters to this day.
Right.
And one of the biggest heroes besides Mitch. So talk about arcs. And I buy it, right? That could be really cheap, but I totally bought it because I think Stansfield was that link. He was able to turn Coleman and make him an asset instead of an enemy.
And they brought that up in the beginning. Or Vince did, not they. Vince brought that up in the beginning. Like, when he has these little introductory paragraphs of each character within each novel to sort of reorient the reader as they go along.
Right.
I think in Transfer, or Scott might not be in Transfer Power, but like when we see him in these later novels, or when we first see him after Term Limits, this sort of interaction between Scott and either Irene or Scott and Stansfield is hinted at. It's not fully explained, that freaking Scott killed a senator and a congressman, but it's and for readers who have read Term Limits, it's a, a highlight. And I wish they would have, like, I don't know, like they've never like said like Mitch, or maybe I'm forgetting, has Mitch ever acknowledged the events of Term Limits?
That's a good question.
There may be something where like he said, like a conversation between like him, Stansfield, and Scott, where he says like they had a relationship before, he was there. That kindly is vaguely familiar, but
if so, anyways. It was really, really quick. Like it was a really loose connection that was just sprinkled in. So,
right,
we we're still missing those 6 years, the term limits to transfer power, or the kill shot to transfer power. 6 years, of which term limits is just somewhere stuck in the middle of that. Which brings us to our next villain, because most likely where Mitch was during the events of term limits and the gap between kill shot and transfer power, he was hunting Rafiq Aziz.
Yes.
He had to have gotten the scar battling Rafiq at some point in this window. So I think it's entirely plausible that as term limits is going on, Mitch is really deep into some shit or undercover hunting Aziz.
That's probably my single most disappointed thing that we never got, is the actual scene of Mitch getting the scar.
Right, same.
Because it's referenced so many times early on.
Yep.
And then when we finally get to kill shot, we get the Rafiq Aziz drop, and it's like, oh shit, is he going to be the villain in this story? But then he's like, oh, he's not. And then we don't get the next book.
Right.
Anyways.
Right. But he comes on
power.
Strong, man, in Transfer Power. I think the first couple villains we're going to talk about here in the actual Mitch Rapp books, once Vince added Mitch Rapp with Transfer and then the Third Option and Separation of Power, I think Vince, one of his core strengths in his first few books was creating these villains.
Yes.
Like Rafiq Aziz is just, he made your skin crawl. I can remember reading, I can vividly almost feel the scene of him sweating in the Oval, deciding if he's going to make his move or not.
Right.
Like he's so, when you're inside Rafiq Aziz's mind, it's like a psychological thriller.
And that's what makes it even cooler when you get his name drop in Killshot.
Yeah.
You know, that, anyways. The other sort of secondary players in Transfer of Power, we have the Attorney General Tutwiler and the Chief of Staff of the Vice President, Dallas King, and the Vice President, Sherman Baxter. You know, these are definitely minor characters. Again, I would argue that they're sort of, they latch on, they're reactionary villains to the plot that's happening at the White House. But yeah, Rafiq Aziz has got to be the big bad in this part.
Yeah, since you mentioned Attorney General Tutwiler, though, I think for this being the first Mitch Rapp book, she plays a really important role in the way she's set up to stand pretty much in Mitch's way and just be against Mitch's approach to everything. And I think by creating her as a character, you really get the sense of what Vince is trying to say. Like, he does not pull his punches when her and Mitch go at it. And when she's responsible for the loss of, I think, one of the hostage rescue teams that they send in to negotiate, and Rafiq obviously doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, and she's like shocked that, what, you can't negotiate with a person like him? And Mitch is like, you don't need somebody with a degree from wherever she got her degree from, Harvard. Mitch comes in and is like, you need someone who understands the mentality of the modern Middle Eastern extremist and the fundamentalist. Right. And Tutwiler is all like wanting to play the academic game of, you know, the soft expectations of if you understand them and if you reach out and if you dangle the carrot. And Mitch is like, no, we need a freaking stick. We need a Teddy Roosevelt big ass stick, you know, to deal with these people. And Tutwiler like freezes. I remember she like physically is in shock and freezes.
Who's the better Attorney General, her or Martin Stokes?
I didn't like that when we get there to Stokes and who's that lady? Peggy Steele?
Peggy Steele.
Yeah.
That felt like something that Vince was really strong about, and then he just completely, you know, like, because she comes back, I think, in Consent to Kill, and she's just like a completely different character. You know, it's like anyways. All right, so we got to speed these up. The third option.
Big one.
We get probably one of our biggest villains.
Big one.
I think the big bad in this one is obviously Senator Hank Clark.
Oh, yeah.
With his underlings, you have Albert Rudin, the congressman. Like, I remember reading those, like, the stories and, like, him in, like, the bath or, like, the spa at the Congressional Country Club. And,
yep.
And does he get thrown out the window? Is he the one that gets thrown out the window?
So, Rudin, yeah. So, I think we have to put these together because you've got third option where you're starting to see
power.
Right. You're starting to see that Hank Clark is this really Machiavellian, behind the scenes, pulling the strings kind of guy. But he's not overtly doing anything bad in public. And I think in the
third option, persona, I guess the main one is the Peter Cameron, the professor.
The professor, right. Because the professor was supposed to be following Rapp in the woods outside of the Count's house in Germany. He hired the Jansons. He was the one who's supposed to clean up loose ends. And remember that scene where he actually thinks he's better than Rapp, hunting him in the woods? And Rapp was like, bullshit, I knew you were there the whole time. I had tabs on you following me. So I think Peter Cameron, a little aloof.
He's like a wannabe Louis Gould.
He pretty much is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Hank Clark's pulling the strings. He's getting Rudin to do his dirty work. So I think he's set up as a really cunning politician, which in Vince's mind makes him a really good villain for being such a good politician. And we're going to see him do some pretty bad stuff by separation of power when he blackmails Mitch by getting the file with Congressman Rudin, and he convinces Rudin, he manipulates him to go on TV and out Mitch so that Hank Clark didn't have to do it. Yet he can go to the committee rooms and play the angry politician who is just floored that this could even be happening, that we have secret assassins doing black ops illegally. But he secretly fed the information to the media with his lapdog and then tossed him out the window.
Right. And then we get one of our first, like, CIA... Vince does this trope a lot where, like, he has someone in the CIA who he doesn't really like.
Yeah.
And this Jonathan Brown character. I don't remember much about him, but I remember there being, you know, this character where we'll see it later on in which book?
I think
We'll get freaking the deputy director in Killshot. And,
right. He leaked the information, right?
Right.
Jonathan Brown gave the dossier to one of Rudin's guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously the other person we get in this novel who overtly in both separation of power and executive power, but he's also sprinkled out, either referenced or, a single chapter here or there, but Ben Friedman.
Right.
This powerful leader of the Mossad.
Yeah. Good character.
Really good character.
Often forgotten, though, I would say.
Yes.
He falls by the wayside when you think of Vince's side characters or like mini villains.
Yes. But I think he's, until they like turn on him, like, Irene, I forget what book it is, but Irene really, it might be executive power, but Irene really like turns on him and puts him in his place.
Yep.
It may even be later than that, but executive power is the one with Donatella.
Yes.
We first get her in separation of power, and then we finish with her in executive power.
Which is the one where Mitch brings her home after she's knocked out or passed out, and Anna gets mad at him.
Oh, is it?
I want to see.
That's got to be separation of power. That's got to be separation.
I think it is separation.
Because executive is where they go to
the Philippines.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is another Ben Friedman one, so we do get a little arc with him, and he comes up later, I think, in a side story. He does eventually get kneecapped by Mitch. Ben Friedman's trying to play Kennedy, trying to hold back, like pretend to share intelligence with her, but also holding back. And then there's that weird thing also in executive power. He kind of is in bed with this David or Jabril Katabi.
Yes.
Where he's kind of using him as an asset, and he tries to bomb him. Like, remember he launches that attack in like Hebron or some Israeli or Palestinian city, but David survives.
David goes and meets with like all these leaders of Hezbollah.
Right.
Yep.
So executive power, I couldn't pick a big bad. If we've had Rafiq Aziz and Hank Clark as our big bads so far, did executive power have anybody?
I think this is Ben's book, like
Ben
Friedman's
Friedman,
time to shine.
But then we learn the Saudis in the background are funding and fueling a lot of this. And that's the book that ends with Mitch in the limo turning over the info on that Saudi Prince Omar.
Right, Prince Omar.
And actually giving the info to one of the Saudi princes that he likes.
Right.
Anyway.
I mean, I guess David, or Jabril, his real name, it's kind of like in Term Limits where like, kind of like in the third option where the professor, he's like the professor doing like most of the work and is like the main villain you think, but then actually there's these other, players that are motivating him throughout, whether it's Ben Friedman trying to manipulate him or the Saudis, ultimately trying to manipulate him. So
right.
Yeah.
All right. That takes us to a very memorable villain again for that creepy factor. Al-Yamani, Mustafa Al-Yamani in Memorial Day. Do you remember that opening scene with him on the boats?
Yes.
Trying to land in the swamps of like Florida and get into the country?
Yeah, I remember I really liked him as a villain, but I wanted more of him.
Well, he was dying the whole time.
Yes, exactly. Because of the bombs and
the radiation.
We also get like his like side guy with Zubair, right?
Right.
And I think in the end he kind of died like as a kind of like a wimp. Like his death scene wasn't that fulfilling for me. So spoiler alert, he's not in my top 5, even though he's a very cool, interesting villain.
Really interesting. Oh, I can't wait to wrap this up with our top 5s because I thought he at least in the creepy factor. And if you think of like a terrorist who's going to run a cell that can get a bomb to the United States and get very close to detonating it, I think Al-Yamani is crafted to be just that persona. He's radical. He's intense. He's a zealot. He's a leader of his people. He definitely has the sheep who will follow him anywhere. Like, I thought he gets under your skin in just this personification of the modern terrorist leader of a cell that could theoretically penetrate the U.S. with a nuke. So I thought great character.
It's hard. We only had 5 spots, so
It's only top 5.
all right, I can't wait to get to that.
And once you, like you said, Attorney General Martin Stokes and Peggy Steele, who he had this kind of relationship with, but basically the politicians in the background who are trying to screw up everything Mitch is trying to accomplish.
Who Vince does this often. You know, they're not the direct villains. They're not like even they might not even be trying to do something wrong, but they inevitably end up fucking something up. You know,
They basically a bunch of people stand in the way of the CIA and the intelligence business doing what it needs to, which leads us to Consent to Kill, because obviously we've got the big bad. We all know, we all infamously, I guess, love Louis Gould. But on the CIA end, that's also when we meet Director of National Intelligence Mark Ross, who he's going to play a big role for a little while.
He is, and his death scene is fucking awesome.
Wait, I don't even remember.
It's Irene's only like confirmed kill in this series.
Oh, right.
Like
right,
that
right.
she actually does. I mean, obviously she like orders Mitch to kill people, but like she puts the poison in the tea or the coffee in the president's Oval Office.
Right. I thought she also killed a vice president. No?
No, she doesn't kill.
Oh, he was angling for... Oh, there was no vice president.
He might have been... No, he was the vice president. He was going to... Vice president-elect. That's right.
Right, vice president-elect. Because active treason was the hit on the motorcade.
Yes. I think that happens in... Protect and Defend. He might go through all of them.
But you're right. Kennedy does get the upper hand on him big time.
Yes.
He also is trying to play like, I'm going to clean up the CIA, wear my big boy pants, boss people around, be a little bitch. And Kennedy and Rapp definitely put him in his place.
Yes.
All right, but this book's got Louis Gould, man. That's the big bad.
I mean, there's some other players. You got Eric Abel. You got the Prince Mohammed bin Rashid. There's Petrov. The Russian. But it's all about Louis Gould.
It was Abel and Petrov who hire Louis Gould, right? They have that conversation about we need a top assassin because all the Saudi money that Mohammed gave to Saeed.
Mohammed, it's the Saudis are trying to get Mitch killed.
Saeed was the guy who lost his son. Mitch killed his son Mitch captured his son and tortured him in Memorial Day. And Saeed goes to the prince and says, "Can you hire hitman?" Prince turns to Abel and Petrov. Yes, there we go. And that's how they.
Actually, I don't think Ross might not be in this book, but he definitely he's the main part of
active treason,
right. And Protect and Defend.
That's right.
He dies in Protect and Defend. Yeah,
that's right. Okay, dark horse here. Not saying he made the top 5, but active treason. I kind of like the man with the red hat, Gavrilo Gazic. I feel like he's Louis Gould light. He's like the Serbian / Yugoslav Southeastern European version of a Louis Gould. Not Mr. French, not Mr. Foreign Legion, but like he's the B-list celebrity of assassins. Like I'd hire him for a medium to small job. If a
better version of him is Grisha, right? A better
True.
So yeah, no, he's when you mention his name, I remember that story. I remember the red hat, but like I just don't think of him as that memorable of a villain.
No, he wasn't, and he was only in one book. For some reason, though, that scene in Limassol, Cyprus, going through this apartment building, climbing on roofs, jumping roofs to roofs, it just
that was a cool scene.
It stands out to me, so I that's what I'm saying. He's like the B list, of assassins.
No, yeah, very true. And then we have the whole Cy Green, Ross, Stu Garrett trio, very very reminiscent to a trio, including Stu Garrett from Term Limits,
right?
These 3 people who want to get into play with the president. So
pretty cool callback to bring Stu Garrett in.
It is. This one is like Stu Garrett. For our Term Limits heads out there, to Vince to bring him back. That was pretty cool.
And
then obviously his next, the opening scene in Protect and Defend is his death.
He's
which
killed
is fucking
on
awesome.
the boat. Yeah. But after Rapp is having a little rendezvous, let's say, with Agent Rivera.
Yeah, which never went anywhere. I wish she stayed in the books.
Although, it was one of the recent books we did. There was a drop that Rap had a fling at one point with a Secret Service agent. No, you know what? Kyle puts it in, I started the next one we're going to do, Order to Kill.
Oh, he references.
He has a little drop that Rap had a fling with a Secret Service agent at one time. And I was like, boom, Rivera.
Again, it's a continuation of those things we picked up. Kyle was trying to show that he did the research.
Right.
He at least read the books and understands the story, to make these callbacks. So,
right. In Kyle, we trust. Cy Green was a little weird side plot in Act of Treason. He was that guy who wanted to pardon. He was like some rich New York
creepy
something millionaire.
He had
to leave the country. So then he goes to Ross and is like, Ross, I want to get back into the country. That was a little side plot.
I don't know. He was very into the sex things. Like it was.
That creepy weird sex.
Act of Treason, not one of my favorite.
Oh, that
novels.
sex show he was putting on. He's like, come up to my apartment. You're right.
Yes.
I feel like that was a Kyle scene. This little like quirky New York City, edgy,
But it's in Europe somewhere. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. I just think of Cy Green as like his typical New York Jew for some reason.
But I think he is a New Yorker. But he has to live in,
true.
Lives in Switzerland. Where you keep all your money.
That's right. He's persona non grata. Yep, and lives in Switzerland. Our protect and defend things take a little bit of a turn to Iran.
Yes.
This is when the nuclear facility gets hit, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the president of Iran was the bad guy, Amatollah. And he's working with the Hezbollah terrorist, Mukhtar. Mukhtar,
yes.
Pretty good. Again, if you're talking a modern Middle Eastern terrorist, not Al-Qaeda type stuff, but more of like local politics, trying to influence change of policy in the whole Israel, Palestine, Iran conflict. I think Mukhtar plays that role real well.
Yeah, again, like these two villains that we only see for one novel that are very compelling, told a good story. Yeah, I mean, I have no problems with them. Did they stand out to me?
Right.
Not a lot. But yeah, no. In the moment in the book, the Protect and Defend, I saw in one of our things, someone said Protect and Defend best top book.
Right.
Like, whoa, that's a bold statement right there.
I saw that on the Facebook group too. Best Vince Lynn book. I'm like, whoa, I haven't seen that. Though
it's a good book, but
there's something to that if you're into the international political thriller. Like Protect and Defend.
Irene getting taken and
yeah, there's a lot with like Iran, the nuclear facility. I feel like that would be that's like a Brad Thor book. That might be one of the closest Vince books to being a Brad Thor style or written type of book.
That's a good one.
Yep.
Not gonna lie.
All right, let's lump these two together: Extreme Measures and Pursuit of Honor.
Yeah, so the first one, obviously, we love this book. Pursuit of Honor, it's a little like roaming in the woods of Iowa with our two terrorist friends. But, they were very convincing in Extreme Measures. You have Kareem and Hakeem, who you had mentioned before with Mustafa al-Yamani getting this bomb to United States. Kareem actually succeeds and sets off multiple bombs in the United States, in D.C.
Not nukes, though.
Not nukes, obviously.
But car bombs, very heavily loaded car bombs.
Very heavily dirty bombs, and I guess a dirty bomb has radioactivity, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyways, he takes out the Hawk and Dove, one of our favorite establishments.
Yeah, they kill quite a number of U.S. government officials. Really do. Some people in the cabinet level, some senators. That's a successful attack.
And they plan that attack on the JCTC.
Right. And pretty much are successful, except at the last minute.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Rap and Nash being there to do that, they would have taken out everybody.
Yeah. So Kareem is training those guys down in South America. There's that whole sequence.
South America, yes.
So Kareem he's definitely the first big bad we've had in a while. I mean, multi-book big bad planning and successfully carrying out these attacks. He's pretty big in terms of he would definitely be on like top list of like people who have hurt America.
Yeah. And I think he probably would have got away with it too if he didn't become
right,
like crazy towards the end of Pursuit of Honor
and take Nash's kids,
and take Nash's kids, and if he had listened to his friend Hakeem,
right. Hakeem eventually redeems himself by calling in
the
tip,
like as much as you can for being a mass murderer,
right? But I remember that also being a deep psychological analysis of Hakeem's transformation.
Yeah.
Being almost afraid himself of Kareem's radicalization and basically getting away from like their childhood dreams of make the world a better place by attacking America. And Hakeem's coming to realize like that worldview, maybe we were brainwashed.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no, they're very good villains. I like them.
We also get a decent, pretty good politi-villain. That secondary Vince Flynn style villain with Senator Lonsdale and Glenn Adams. Both kind of typical Vince characters of Lonsdale on I think the Senate Intelligence Committee and wants to basically expose everything, really have
judiciary.
Government.
She's on the judiciary.
Judiciary, yes.
And she gives it up to become, and ultimately she becomes an ally.
Absolutely.
Of Mitch, and she was in like
yep,
the one we just read, The Survivor, right?
Right.
So.
Because she's at the JCTC. She witnesses Nash and Rapp save her life and save lots of lives. And they give her the ultimatum, say, like, you can stay in our way and attacks like this will continue, or you can get out of our way and let us do our jobs, which you just saw we're pretty damn good at.
Right. Yeah, she's a good, foil in that first one, and then you see her switch to the good side, which I liked. And then Glenn Adams, he's, this piece of shit. He's the one that I guess ultimately kicks off this, where we see the culmination of it in the most recent book, this tension between Mitch and Mike Nash. Mitch obviously wants to gut this traitor. Nash has some reservations.
Yeah.
So this is where it all kicks off. This sort of dilemma. And at the end of this book, we have Mitch outing Mike Nash and putting him into the spotlight. So.
Yeah, Nash is like, we can't just torture and kill in a black site the CIA Inspector General. He's like, Mitch, I'm all about capturing terrorists. And you and we got our 1-2 punch kind of interrogation, good guy, bad guy thing down pat. We don't do that to our own. And Mitch is like, hell yeah, we do it to our own if they're traitors and sold us out.
Let alone the Inspector General of the CIA.
Right. Who's supposed to be the watchdog stopping this stuff. I mean, I kind of can get Nash there just a little.
Just a little.
Just a little.
But anyways, all right. So we're almost to the end here, but we have American Assassin and Killshot, where we jump back in time. I would say American Assassin, we obviously have this, Sharif, Mitch's first kill. We have Syed over in Lebanon, and the other players that are present in Lebanon, which I think like Vince actually pulls like real life terrorists at the time. There's the one guy who's in charge of Russia, or in the KGB or whatever.
Ivanov. Yep.
Ivanov. And then I would argue that Victor begins to emerge as a villain here, because especially on the farm. And obviously that is continued, and I think he's one of the main villains in Killshot. You also have the trio of Max Vega, Paul Fournier, and
Paul Cook, who is giving away CIA secrets to Paul Fournier, thinking they're sharing intelligence.
Right.
But
as the deputy director of the CIA.
So Fournier is a decent villain. He's not around much. He's a good foil to who's that lady that DGSE agent.
Oh yeah,
who's
I forget her name. But
really good. But Fournier is like toying with her, and he has a history of sexual abuse. So he's crumb. Like he's terrible, but a decently written character for the role he had to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, Victor. Chet Bramble, the backstory we get on Chet Bramble.
Yes.
And then Mitch in that scene at that apartment complex, taken out or chasing Chet, like yeah, good stuff there.
Another thing we never got him finally killing Chet.
Right.
You know he would have killed him.
Right. And Vince's last villain, last big bad, Joe Rickman.
Who obviously continues to be a villain in Kyle's first book.
Right.
But in The Last Man, awesome villain. We don't know he's the villain until halfway through the book. We think he's just this, innocent bystander who gets captured. One of the great twists in one of Vince Flynn's novels was, learning that he's actually, part of this whole thing. We actually find out that, a couple, I think is one of his other station chiefs in, where are they? Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, yeah.
Yeah, Afghanistan is with him. There's a bunch of other, different players. And then there's also these minor, characters in the State Department, in the military, and Senator Ferris, and, we get Louis Gould brought in. He's not quite the villain yet in this novel. He becomes a friend of Mitrap. So Joel Wilson
of the FBI, yep, who wants to look into these guys and make a case against them.
This one has a lot of little mini villains in each of the departments. We see Ariana Vintner, State Department. We see Louis Gould. We see Senator Ferris in obviously in the Congress. We see Joe Wilson in the FBI. At every single intersect of intelligence, we see where it could go bad, and it's kind of cool here. And obviously Rickman in the CIA.
Yeah. But I remember The Last Man standing out for the complexities also of the Middle Eastern agencies as well, because General Zahir is former Taliban, but we put him in charge of the Afghan army, and he's playing both sides. Then he's kind of in cahoots with the ISI, because the ISI's got their people on the ground trying to also get former Taliban, to fight the Americans and antagonize them. And the leader pulling the strings from the ISI perspective is Durrani. And there's a great kind of dichotomy between Durrani as the bad ISI guy and one of his colleagues, Ashan. I mess up Ashan and Ashani, but there's also
because there is an Ashani in. I think Ashani is in
Protect and Defend.
Protect and Defend.
This one's Ashan.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, there's two guys, Ashan and Ashani, both kind of want to work with the CIA.
Yeah, no, they both play a very similar role too, which is kind of funny.
I think one is Iranian who works with the CIA and a good relationship with Kennedy. And then Ashani of the ISI also has a good relationship with Kennedy and wants to work with them and doesn't really want to face down someone like Mitch.
Yeah.
Phew, that is Vince's villains. There they are.
All right, it's time.
We got to rank them.
All right, so we'll go. Well, all right,
5.
How about we'll start with 5.
Start with 5,
and I'll give mine. So for mine, this was really hard, and I had to give some love to some of these secondary, not like the main part of the book villains, but some really good secondary villains. So I did a 3-way tie. I did a little cheat. 3-way tie for my number 5, and I have Ben Friedman, tied with Victor, tied with Scott Coleman.
Ooh, okay. Whoa. All right. Okay.
Because I just feel like, Victor, while he is a really good villain, he's not the main villain. Again, Ben Friedman is a very good villain, but he's never the main villain. And then, we said Scott was the main villain of Turbulence, but he's really not a villain. But I think each of those individually are very good characters that I had to give love to. So
Okay. Well, I did not cheat. I have no ties. I'm just gonna put that out there. I was straight up.
This is my only tie. And it's at the bottom, so I had to do it.
That's true. Yeah, but I did have a tie on honorable mentions, so I got a couple of honorable mentions who would be in that 6, 7, 8 slot. But we'll get there. My 5th, like I said before, I like Al-Yamani. Memorial Day.
Al-Yamani.
He is just a mastermind.
That was a hard cut. That was a hard cut.
Yeah, he made the list for me. So our number 4.
All right, so number 4, I gotta go. Is it? People are probably gonna kill me for this, but Rafiq Aziz.
Whoa, that
I'm putting
low.
him in number 4. I'm putting him in number 4, and I'm only putting him in number 4. What I think hurts him is the fact that we we see him pop up again. I think he would be higher if he was only in transfer power.
Yep.
If he was just in transfer power, I probably would have him higher. But because I get that little tease in Kill Shot and I don't see the culmination of it,
down. Yeah.
It lets me down a little bit. So I'm and that's, I guess it's no fault of Vince, because I'm sure he wanted to write about it. But
right.
This is what we have. So number 4 for me.
Dude, Opportunity though, I think if there is a post Kill Shot book written at some point and it involves the hunt for Ravikases, that book has a chance to be phenomenal and to put Rafik in definitely the top 1 or 2 slot for villains.
Yeah.
If we see that scar scene.
For sure. Yeah, because we would have him now. And again, spoiler alert, my top 3 are all characters or villains that were the top character for 2 books. In order to be a top villain, you had to be 2 books.
You had to stick around, right? Your story arc couldn't be just wrapped up, in one.
That was my other problem with Al-Yamani, was the fact that while he was a very good character, standalone,
yeah,
and the other one, who I thought was really good, was like the whole Iranian and Hezbollah stuff. But again, one book.
Right. It's like, are you going to pick Mukhtar? Are you going to pick Amatullah? Are you going to pick
right.
Ashan? There's like so many of them that they kind of blend together. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. 4th spot
What's
for
your
me.
number 4?
Because it meant a lot to Vince to have these crappy politicians and politicos. I'm going Stu Garrett.
Whoa, Stu Garrett. He's a good villain.
Stu Garrett's a great villain, and he's not a typical thriller villain. He's a very Vince Flynn thriller villain.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Because he's an operative.
Sure.
He's a political hack. He like rigs campaigns and public media, performances. Like, yeah, Stu Garrett, baby.
All right, so my next one, I guess you could probably, maybe it's a little bit of a cheat because I know what happens in the next book, which is, I guess, not a Vince Flynn book, but Joe Rickman.
Whoa.
Like, this character is just such an awesome freaking character.
Whoa.
And the heel turn we get of, I guess is that a problem, that like we get this amazing heel turn in the Last Man, but then again the heel turn we get in the Survivor.
It pays off in the Survivor,
but that's not a Vince Flynn book.
No, it pays off.
I don't know, the groundwork that Vince laid with this character in The Last Man, to me, I don't know, this guy's part of the CIA, part of the institution, but he's so jaded.
Right.
He feels so betrayed that he turns on Irene, on Mitch, and it's personal. He makes it personal.
Right.
In the rest of them, it's about America. It's about what America represents. But in this case, it is specifically Mitch. It is specifically Irene. Okay. And he does things to, like I remember reading that part where, I guess this is in the Survivor. It's in the Survivor or Last Man, where he has him go to London and he knows that the guy in Afghanistan, right, where he has enough time to get the guy out, but he knows the guy won't come out. And like literally this is the guy so far down on the totem pole that like, why would he release the information with him? But Mitch knows him and likes this guy.
Yep. It gets personal. Like Hurley said, don't make it personal. Joe Rickman from the grave makes it personal.
Makes it personal. Yes.
Dude.
No, that's in The Last Man. Yeah.
All right. That's a good one. But Joe Rickman does not make my top 5, nor does he make my honorable mentions.
Wow.
He's good, but can I say he's one of Vince's best villains? I don't think so.
There were some complex, though.
Yeah, he was. Okay. My favorite part about him was that he was one of the first, even as an older guy, was one of the first on the ground in the war in Afghanistan. Like, he was going out there in village garb, riding on horseback, horses, giving out money to the elders. Like, that kind of stuff makes me love Rickman. But again, that was like 2 sentences just of his backstory. So, yeah. All right. I see you. I gave the 3rd spot to Rafik. Rafik Aziz, He's up there for me. I think deserved top 3. I was considering higher, actually, to be honest with you.
Really?
But I didn't do it. Which means I think both you and I in our top couple of spots here might have some similar names, people we haven't used yet.
All right, so I had to put Hank Clark in the top.
Oh.
So number 2, Hank Clark. Honestly, one of the best villains. Obviously, I'm ranking him as number 2, but this guy is super complex. I love his backstory. This guy rags to riches. He's super manipulative. And, the stuff he does with both, convincing the congressman, and then he throws the congressman out the window, and then manipulating Peter Cameron. I don't know, like, this.
Snake.
I would love to see
He's a snake.
A Hank Clark-like character in the future in one of Kyle's books.
Yeah, I would too. I think he needs it. The Cooks, you could argue.
Yeah, no,
close.
that's what I was thinking. Like, the Cooks are coming to be like that.
Right. I actually wanted them to be like that, and I think he's going to flesh them out more, and they will be. And again, they have to be multiple books to really be, like, you can't say Power Station Total Power would be one of Kyle's best villains, or you can't say Lethal Agent, actually, no.
The terrorist.
Saeed
terrorist
Halabi, I think, was around multiple books.
No, see, that's the thing. He's in the one. He's a continuation from one of the ones we're about to get to.
True. So I do think Halabi is a good character. But basically, there are some that just have a one-book story arc, and I don't think they can make a top list like this. So we need the Cooks again, is what I'm saying. Like, we need to see them long-term, their long game, like a Hank Clark.
Right.
All right, hold up. If Hank Clark is your number 2, your number 1's got to be Louis Gould.
Oh, yeah. I mean, who couldn't put Louis Gould as a number 1? Who's your number 2?
Well,
number 2?
I reversed them. I got Louis Gould number 2.
Okay, you got Louis Gould number 2. Okay.
Hank Clark number 1.
All right, so first give me why you put Louis Gould as number 2, and then I'll talk about Louis Gould too, and then you can finish up with Clark.
Okay, it was tight, and Louis Gould obviously is just you hate his guts, right? Personally, like, he's not a dude you'd want to grab a beer with, kick back, and hang out. Like, he abuses his wife mentally. Does he physically? I'm not sure, but
might be physically.
Maybe, yeah. He berates her over the pregnancy, right? Like, saying, you got pregnant without me wanting to because you wanted it. And she's like, no, I didn't. It just happened. Like, he is an utter just douchebag. But he's crafted so well. People. Like, there's a guy in high school who acted that way. Everybody knows a douche like Louis Gould, but Louis Gould also has the skills. So usually,
that's what's like interesting about him. Right, he's actually really good.
Right,
like, he's actually really good.
Like,
most of the guys that act like him aren't that good or interesting. They think they are,
right,
but they're not. But he's actually walks the walk a little bit.
Exactly,
and
makes him scary.
Makes him very scary.
Yeah. Okay, here's why he's not 1 for me.
All right, give it to me.
I needed to respect what makes Vince Flynn Vince Flynn, and it's not a Vince Flynn book without a politician hooting and hollering in front of cameras, giving these speeches, going out in committee rooms, making a case, wanting the TV cameras on them, and then turning around and being a complete snake. That is Vince Flynn. Yes, Louis Gould, super assassin kind of guy, assassin for hire. Yes, that's Vince Flynn style. But what's really Vince Flynn style are these politicians. And so I think Hank Clark takes the cake for me because he just is representative of just an important part, or what I see as a super important part of Vince's stamp on the genre, which is not just badass action, but really smart and with it political intrigue that works for the times.
Yeah, and I think like anyone can pick, some terrorist from the Middle East to make as their main villain, but Vince actually makes it interesting by bringing in someone from home and showing that, not everyone who is maybe signing off on, trying to help us win this war, be whatever we're America's supposed to be, is actually looking out for America, but is actually looking out for themselves. Right. Yeah. No, it was tough. This was a really tough exercise. I really enjoyed doing this today.
Yeah. Feel free to post your top 5 villains. We'd love to see it on the social media. Maybe we'll get something posted when this episode comes out, and feel free to chime in. We'd love to hear from you. But do you want to hear from definitely the world's top Mitch Rapp fan? Do you want to hear Ryan Steck's top 5?
Yeah, I've read this article, and then we can post the link to the article when we post this pod. But yeah, he has this article where he counts down
He did top 10.
What book did he do this when it came out, though?
And he actually, so he did it over a number of months, and by the time he got to the final one, it was already The Survivor. We already had Kyle.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
he ended up having a top 10
the definitive
list. Yep.
top 10 list.
Based on Vince, right? Based on all Vince books. Number 5, Al-Yamani. That's what I had.
Right.
I had Al-Yamani in that 5 spot. But here we go. Number 4, Hank Clark.
Number 4. Okay.
Yeah, he dropped him to number 4. Number 3, we didn't have on the list. Kareem. Extreme Measures, Pursuit of Honor.
He's, I don't know, again, he's a 2-book villain.
Yeah,
so that makes him a big player. But out of all the 2-book villains, he's the weakest.
Right.
And then I didn't like his second book that much.
Me neither, right.
Extreme Measures is a good book, but I think like the fact that Pursuit of Honor is one of my least favorite books.
Right.
Like,
and Hakeem. I end up liking Hakeem more in that book than Kareem.
I know, exactly. I think more about Hakeem in that novel, and obviously the whole Mike Nash storyline, than I do the villain.
Yeah, I think, agreed. I think it's hard for Kareem to crack top 10 villains even, but that's just
No,
us.
he would be top 10. He would be top 10.
You think so? Okay. We said a lot of names, though, on this pod that I think might be.
We did.
Anyway.
We'll have to do this again once we finish the series.
I think Ryan's second, an argument could be made for that both you and I were wrong on our lists. I think you leaving him out and me putting him low. I think you can make an argument we missed this one. Stu Garrett was number 2. I think that's fair. The way he comes back into the series, I think putting
2
Stu
books,
Garrett...
and one of them is not even a Mitrap book?
Dude, I think he's that good of that role, and Vince wanted to basically show that kind of persona. So I think that's a good move.
He's not. I don't think he's better than Hank Clark. Like he represents the same thing that Hank Clark is, and I think Hank Clark is better. He's definitely an honorable mention for me.
Right. Same.
Stu Garrett is
he's a weasel,
awful weasel.
Right.
But I think whatever if you had to think of these archetypes or character arcs, then Vince is trying to represent the same thing with both him and Clark is the better version of that, I think.
I think so, too. And then, number 1 for Ryan's deck, he had a tie. The 2 people who wounded Mitch Rapp the most, Rafiq Aziz and Louis Gould. All right. There's an argument to be made there. Yep.
I mean, they're probably the 2 most iconic villains from this series.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And if you think about what they've taken from Mitch, because Rafiq, he did plan the Lockerbie bombing. He was one of the masterminds that killed Maureen. And Louis Gould, obviously, consent to kill with Anna. So, yeah, they both, in terms of hurting Mitch and impacting him. All right, got a couple of superlatives here with villains. Do you want to do your honorable mentions first? Who didn't make the list that you also want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I was just, we sort of were talking about it, but I think, Stu Garrett, I really liked as a villain. Kareem, he's definitely I think he's in the top 10. And then some of these, sort of one-off kind of guys, like you mentioned, the Gabriel Gazic, or even the Jabril Katabi, they're cool characters. I don't know. Some of the non, I guess, the stateside villains we mentioned. None of the ones we didn't. None of the ones we mentioned that we didn't then bring up in our list. I really cared about.
Right. Yeah, the only ones I would bring up, like you said, are Gazic, Act of Treason. I think General Durrani deserves a shout out. If we're talking ISI, he plays that role perfectly, and he's in bed with Joe Rickman. You can argue Joe Rickman couldn't have been as successful as he was without a Durrani helping out from Pakistan, who'd ultimately harbor him,
right,
and do the fake interrogation video scenes with him. So Durrani, good character, and didn't make my list, but really, really was pushing for a top 5 spot. Ben Friedman. He's very clearly 6th.
I really like Ben Friedman.
He should be there. Nice.
No love for Victor, huh? No love for Victor?
Nah, no love for Victor.
All right. Fair enough. I'm the only one.
Yeah. All right. Got a couple of superlatives here. And I think I know the answer to this first one. What's the villain you most want back or to see again in the novel?
Well, he's dead. So I guess if they're dead already or not dead.
Well, no, that dead if they could be written in a like in between or a spin-off.
Oh, it's got to be
Rafik.
Yeah, of course. I want to know that story. I guess the second thing would be, how does Victor die? I want to see Mitch kill Victor because that happens.
Right.
He's wounded at the end of Killshot, but we don't ever see Mitch finish the job. But yeah, no, I want to see the scene where he gives him the scar. I want to see what motivates him to then go on and take the White House. Like there's a lot there that I would love to see. So he's the one I most want back.
Or how about this? Who is the best team of villains? If you had to name a Mitch Rapp axis of evil, who kind of worked together, group of 2 or 3, the best?
This is tough. Probably like Ben Friedman and
David.
And Jabril and David.
Yeah.
And then also, those 2.
I really like the conversation with Abel and Petrov trying to figure out how to hire Louis Gould. They're like sipping on a bottle of something in like this Switzerland
like some
chalet.
Kirsch, like some Kirsch or something like that.
Yeah, like he even picked up some stuff. Like that was an iconic conversation.
Or some Hennessy, like cognac. I don't know.
Yeah, they're totally nobody characters, but for some reason that conversation was kind of cool. But I think I also liked, because American Assassin was really about Mitch and his training. It wasn't necessarily about some big bad plot, save the world. But at the same time, I thought the cast of characters in Beirut were the definite like axis of evil. You had Roddy, who I think is the one who gets his ear bitten off, or maybe he spits at somebody in an interrogation. So Roddy's one of these guys. Syed. I feel like there was a whole crew of people in Beirut.
Syed does the interrogations. I know that.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like all those Beirut characters made a good like gang of different factions, and that they represented real life factions, like we talked to with Fred Burton. I thought that was a cool axis of evil he created that got at the landscape of the time period. Hezbollah and everyone.
The Paul Cook, Max Vega, Paul Fournier, Samir, and Rafik combo is
right.
In Killshot. I like that book more than you did.
Meeting in the church, that was cool.
Yeah, the meeting in the church, and although like we never really see their plan come to fruition, though.
No, I thought they were kind of a weak cast of characters.
Yeah, no, now that I think about it, like they're each individually they're cool. Like interesting, but then they don't really get shit done.
That Max Vega was just like a playboy who was like a millionaire who's like
Fournier. He was there for the money. He was there because of the money.
Yeah, he was a very weird guy. How about this one? The smartest or most cunning villain? You have to say Hank Clark?
No, I think Joe Rickman.
Joe Rickman. Yep, Joe Rickman. Good point.
He gets the best of him.
He does.
Yeah. It's got to be Rickman.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think you can top that one. Or who's the most badass villain? Like Bond villain kind of stuff. Just who gets just cool shit done.
Bond villain? I would have to say Mustafa Al-Yamani.
Yamani, right. I think so too.
Or Rafik is a close second. Because, you think of Bond villains, they're like someone who gets all the way almost to the very end, and then Bond comes in and stops them. So like Memorial Day is the perfect like Bond movie, because the nuke is like making its way, and then Mitch comes in at the very end and stops this plan that's been years in the making.
For some reason, I think of Pierce Brosnan when I think of Memorial Day. I don't know why, but Pierce Brosnan's Bond movies is like
probably because of GoldenEye, I guess, right? Because he comes in at the very end and on a helicopter.
That chopper, yeah, maybe that's why. I guess it's GoldenEye. I don't know.
That's when they come in with the satellite, right?
Right, with Trevelyan and all that, whatever his name was. That satellite is in Brazil or something? Or no,
It is in Brazil.
Brazil. And I think
Or
it's
in
broken.
the south. It's in
Costa Rica?
It just broke. It just broke. It's in Costa Rica. Yeah, no, well, I don't know, but it's in. I gotta look this up.
This is somewhere Dominican Republic, but I saw they were letting it fall into disrepair
It just collapsed.
for some reason.
It's in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
no, it's in Puerto Rico.
Because it's in the U.S. Yeah, but for some reason, anytime you take a thriller novel, and if I think of it as a movie, I just feel like it has the vibe of a Pierce Brosnan Bond movie. I don't know why.
That's funny. Yeah, no, it's in Puerto Rico.
Maybe it was the time period. Maybe it was reading
fixed.
these books in the 90s.
Probably.
Maybe that was it, in early 2000s. All right, here we go. Which villain do you think Kyle Mills would most like to grab a beer with?
Would Kyle like to grab a beer with?
And you as well.
I would love to pick the brain of Louis Gould.
Absolutely.
Just really understand what's going through that fucked up sociopath mind of his.
100% with you. And then I'd want to kick his ass out back when he's super drunk.
We see him in Consent to Kill, and then Mitch lets him go, and then he pops back up in The Last Man, and we think he's actually turned good because he goes to try to help Mitch, but no, it's actually just he's trying to save his ass, and then at the very first second he's going to he fucking kills Stan Hurley. What a fucking piece of shit.
I can see Kyle throwing a few back with Ben Friedman.
Oh, yeah. Would you want to get a beer with Victor?
No. I don't want to see his face. After what he does in Kill Shot, I don't want to be near that guy.
Sip a martini with Stu Garrett?
You know what? I would like to meet a Stu Garrett just to really assess how big of a prick they are. It's like they can't
tell him you're an
be
up and
that...
coming. You're going for governor in New York, and you want him to tell you your chances. Cause isn't there that scene where he meets with some guy from Indiana or Iowa?
You're right.
And the guy has you really see the inner workings of his mind and how he thinks about these political strategy. And he's this guy has a bum nose, and he's never gonna
right. So I want to hear that thought process. I want to watch him be a weasel. I just want to know if he's as big of a prick as he seems, if he is in real life. I feel like by the time you just pick out a beer and order it, you'd be like, oh, yeah, you're a douchebag. I'm leaving.
You're a douchebag.
Just based on what they order. Anyway, Vince's Villains. Been fun.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was good. All right, let us know your top 5 villains. We'd love to hear from it. We'll post on Insta our top 5 villains after we run this pod.
Yes,
so.
yes.
All right, so next week we'll be coming to you with part 1 of Kyle's first full book, Order to Kill. I started reading that as well, Mike. Really excited to talk about that with you. We need to thank our patrons, our special operator Sherry F., our special agents George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. Find us at mitchrappod.com or on Twitter and Insta. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.